Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the 8.11 support tier list. So, as always, you can find timestamps in the description if you don't have time to watch the whole thing. You want to jump around to your favorite part, and you can access this Google Doc in the description as well. I already have the 8.11 patch notes up. I put a link to that in the Google Doc here for you, and I have the 8.11 80 carry tier list. And that's been very popular because a lot changed about 80 carry, and that has about 7,000 or so views by the time of this video, which is quite a lot for the channel. So a lot of people found that very interesting and useful. So be sure to check those out. And I'll reference these a little bit as we're going down the support tier list because they do kind of inform sort of the shifting around of some of the supports on the list. You know, I think I'm probably just going to shift Nami up here for the general population. But I do think that Rakan is really good, but Nami's just the best for most normal people, I think. As far as methodology goes, as I always say, this is intended for a plat minus audience, so you might still find it useful even if you're diamond, but, you know, I'm primarily talking about the, you know, the bottom 97%, the vast majority of people. So this is not a tier list for professional play. It's not a tier list for challengers. It starts to get very different when you have an entire game full of highly intelligent players with really good mechanical skill, or you have the kind of organization of something like professional play where they get hours and hours and hours of practice and communication with various champions. So let's keep that in mind. It's also targeted towards non-specialists, right? So this is not targeted towards the Thresh one-tricks out there or the Bard one-tricks. You know, obviously, if you one-trick a champion like that, then you can be very effective. You can get a lot of wins out there. I'm talking to, you know, the thousands of people watching, not you, not like each individual person. This isn't an individualized tier list, but it's intended for that broader audience. So be sure to keep that in mind. So just in case your favorite champion, you know, might be a bit lower than you think, that's fine, right? Like, some people are just better with certain champions. They just practice them a lot more. They just get their kit. They understand them a lot more conceptually. They just like playing them a lot more. So that's fine. You know, this isn't the tier list for each individual. Once again, this is just setting kind of some what I think are like guidelines for thinking about sort of the power structure and the pecking order, if you will, of this patch. So it's just to get you thinking. But, you know, obviously, if you really love Lux support or you really love, you know, Talia support, I've had a couple people mention that, you know, of course, just go ahead and play it, do whatever you want. But I'm just trying to give you some ideas that can help you climb in some elo for a lot of people. And I don't always look at raw statistics, although the statistics do correlate a lot with what I recommend. But, like, for instance, if we look at just like the rating here on Lolalytics, it's pretty close, but like they have Bard a lot higher than I would have Bard. They have Brand higher than I have it, but a lot of these champions may not be in the exact same order, but, you know, they're going to be highly recognized as the strongest champions, right? Like the top 6 are all enchanters. You know, I might have some champs up a little bit higher. Like I bumped Leona and Braum up a little bit. We'll explain why on this patch. Just keep in mind with Pyke, I predicted after the first week he'd have a 43% win rate. Right now he's got a 39.5% win rate. So Pyke is really, really bad. So I'll recap it and talk about why, probably kind of near the end of the tier list, because I have him as like an honorable mention at tier 3. But yeah, and just as I predicted, I had a Pyke video like 2 weeks ago. There are a lot of structural problems with that champion right now. And so even if they buff his numbers, as far as support goes, if they buff him too much, he won't be played as a support anymore. He'll be like a mid lane or a jungler or something. But he has a lot of problems, so we'll talk about him sort of near the end. But just keep that in mind as we're going through. And then with each one of the picks for the top 2 tiers, so for the top 15 champions, you can click on this. I have a Google Doc link. Then I have a link to the wiki, which I'll be talking about as we go through the video. I have a rating system. I have recommended runes and recommended items. Then if I have an in-depth guide for the support, then I have it linked there as well on the channel. So I've got all the information right here on one page. Very easy to access. Now, this rating system is something that I started doing last patch. I think a lot of people liked it. So basically what this breaks down to is lane pressure is how likely is this champion going to be able to control the lane? How are they going to be able to exert their will on the lane? So this could be through poke. It could be through push. It could be through kill threat. There's a lot of ways that champions can exert their will on the lane, but just how much control, how much power do you have during the laning phase? with this champion. And then kill threat is specifically how likely is this champion to get a kill in the lane, either, by himself or herself, or in conjunction with the AD carry or jungler. So how dangerous are they early on? Can they get a lot of kill power in the lane? Safety is kind of takes into account both the laning phase and the late and the mid game. So how likely is this champion to die? Right? So how many escapes do they have? How many defensive capabilities do they have? Just how safe is that champion overall? And this is a very important stat this day and age, because there are a lot of assassins, a lot of very high damage champions running around out there, and bot lane is a circus these days, as I'm sure you know if you played solo queue, right? The jungler, it's Zen or Graves every game if they're not banned, and then they're just going to sit on bottom, and then half the time you're going to have a mid laner, like a Talon or a Zed or something like that, that's just going to come down and sit bottom lane, because more and more people are figuring out that you win the game through bot lane. Right? If you just camp and sit on bot, you're shutting out two champions, and you're gonna win the game probably. And there are more rewards on the bot lane too, which I've been saying this for years now. Right? Like the tower is much easier to take if you get a kill. If you have a successful gank bot lane, there's a decent chance you get 2 kills instead of just 1, and then you're gonna have 3 people bottom if it's clean. So if the jungler comes in and just clean takes out 2 people, you're gonna have 3 people, and they can all just dogpile on that tower and kill it very quickly. And then you can rotate and get the dragon very quickly too. So there are a lot of incentives for going bot lane. Versus top lane, there's only 1 person to kill up there. If you do get the kill, then you're only going to have 2 people there, so the tower's going to fall a lot slower, and you're only going to have access to Rift, and that's only at 10 minutes into the game when that spawns, and that takes a lot longer to kill. So really, it's way, way more worth your time to go bot lane. Now, with bot lane, you also have to keep in mind that there's a lot more vision, so you have to be able to work around the vision, but a lot of people have figured out this formula for winning in solo queue. And so now not only do you have the jungler camping bot, but a lot of times you have the mid laner camping bot too, and often they'll come together. So this is why safety is very, very important in this meta right now. So champions like Zyra have a lot of lane dominance, a lot of kill pressure. They are very, very strong, but they're just not safe in that kind of environment where bot lane falls really far behind, in levels and in gold compared to the jungler and the mid laner right now. And so safety is of paramount value right now. Then you have scaling. So I have an entire video on scaling. It's just called Scaling Explained. So be sure to watch that on the main channel if you want to know more about how that works. But some champions just do better as the game goes on. Right now, this could be because of their numbers, because they have really high ratios, like really high AP or AD ratios. It could be that they have really high progression on their abilities. So maybe they get, they have 2 or sometimes even 3 really powerful abilities that gain a lot of extra functionality as they get more points in that ability, right? Maybe they have the items that they get scale up over time. So like a Rod of the Ages or a Tier or something like that takes a little bit of time to come online. But scaling just refers to how strong is that champion as the game progresses and moves forward, right? And then reliability is probably one of the most useful ones to think of, but this is kind of a combination of things that people usually talk about separately. So reliability refers to how likely is this champion to be able to, for someone to play him at an optimal level, right? So how often is this champion going to do their thing in this game, right? How often can you count on them to come through and do what you expect them to do, right? And so you could think of this as consistency as well is often a word that gets thrown around. So reliability, like mechanics, can reflect reliability. So if a champion has a lot of really hard skill shots, if a champion is very dangerous and they can get picked off and killed if they're not safe, that could factor into reliability. But it's not just the player playing it that makes it reliable, it's how the team functions around that champion too. So if that champion is really easy to get camped and shut down, or if they fall behind and they're really bad because they just don't have a kit that works really well defensively, then their reliability is going to go down quite a bit. So it could be personal mechanics, how difficult the champion is to play, but also how easy is the champion to shut down. Are there a lot of really popular counter picks in the meta right now to that champion? All of that factors into what I'm talking about when I talk about reliability. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. I just want to get all that preamble out of the way here. If you haven't looked at the AD carry tier list, this is what's going to impact supports the most. So the TLDR you need to know is like Kai'Sa, Lucian, Xayah, Draven, and Twitch are all going to be the best for solo queue. You'll still see more Ezreal, but until you get to Diamond, I mean, he's going to be good. You're going to see him a lot. He's very popular, but yeah, he can be pretty strong, and we might see some more Varus come back in too, but these are going to be the really heavy hitter powerhouse champions once people figure it out, right? Like, Kai'Sa's still going to get picked. People are figuring out Lucian. I saw a lot of Lucian on the very first day, so that's not a secret. There's been a lot of YouTubers that have been hyping up Lucian on this patch. He's the most obvious fit for Essence Reaver. Now, a lot of Kai'Sas aren't rushing Essence Reaver yet, but once they figure that out, then she'll be super strong as well. And then, like, Xayah's kind of sleeper. It's going to take people a while to figure out the appropriate build on her. I think that she should transition over to an Essence Reaver build. I had someone ask me about this in a comment yesterday. But I think she could go into something like Essence Reaver, Blade Ruin, King, Black Cleaver, and still be fairly strong. Now, it depends, you know, on a few different things, but I think that could be pretty good. And then I think that Draven is still going to be really strong. And Twitch, once people figure out they can go back to the Blade the Ruin King, could be pretty good too. So he can go like Ruin King, Hurricane, and then Storm Razor, and be pretty strong. And that's one word there. So yeah, so that's going to impact the supports that are going to be really strong as well. So let's go ahead and talk about these supports. All right, number one, Nami. Still going to be very strong. She was arguably the best support last patch, and I think that she will continue to be the best support because she got even better. She's very, very good with Lucian historically, and I think Lucian... I have Kai'Sa at number one, but it very well could be Lucian. They're like number one and number 1A, right? Those are going to be the strongest champions right now. And the reason that she's so good with Lucian is his double shot mechanic. Every time he uses an ability, he shoots twice. Each one of those shots triggers a Nami E. So if you have a Nami E on somebody, and he just auto attacks, dash, and then double shot, it's going to use both of those E's. So he just is able to proc and trigger those E's a lot faster than any other champion. So it just gets that damage on top of people faster than any other champion that that uses Nami's E. So let me pull her up real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right here. So, you know, usually it's every basic attack, but Lucian can trigger it twice really quickly. So that's a very good combination. Also, she has a very strong heal in the laning phase, and she's very good at early trading. Lucian loves to fight early. He's very dangerous, even starting at level 2. You know, he can dash in, especially now that people aren't going to be running Caitlyn or Jinx or some of these other longer range champions more. Then he can get in there and brawl with a lot of champions early on. He can definitely muscle up on people like Xayah, Ezreal, a lot of those champs. And Nami is probably, if not the best, one of the best sort of 2v2 lane champions in early skirmishes. So Nami's very strong. Also, Lucian doesn't like to go fleet footwork. He likes to go press the attack. And so that means he's not going to have as much healing in his kit. And so having that heal is very valuable these days because more and more AD carries are going to move away from fleet footwork after the nerf, and they're going to go for things like press the attack much more often. So that means that Nami's heal becomes even more valuable. So she's very good with the best AD carry right now, or one of the best, Lucian, because of that specific interaction. And she's very good because of the heal. She's really good with Kai'Sa and Lucian as well because Ardent Sensor. Whenever you put Ardent Sensor on somebody, Lucian procs Ardent Sensor twice off of each one of those basic attacks. So whenever he double attacks, that's 2 Ardent Sensor procs. So that's a lot of extra damage. And then because you're going to get a lot of extra attack speed off of things like Gensu's, off of things like Essence Reaver, then that's going to make Ardent Sensor that much better because you're going to... More attack speed means more on hit, and that means more, you know, Ardent Sensor procs. And Ardent Sensor gives the attack speed as well, so that means you're going to get more Gensu's procs. That means you're going to get more Essence Reaver cooldown reductions. So just anything that uses Ardent Sensor is going to be much, much stronger, both because of the prevalence of Gensu's on a lot of the top level champs and Essence Reaver on a lot of top level champs. So she's very, very good with that. She's also a champion who, in theory, could get something like a Zeke's if she had to in the mid game, because she's not as dependent on plus healing and shielding stat as some of the other enchanters like Janna, like Soraka, because she only has one plus healing and shielding here. So plus healing and shielding is good on her, but because she has so much crowd control in her kit, she has, you know, the Aqua Prison for like a hard stun. Then she's got the Tidal Wave, which is a good knockup. She's got a slow here. So she already has 3 kinds of CC, so she can still be really valuable, even if her wave healing is not as high as it potentially could be. So if she doesn't rush Redemption and Mikhail's for the really big healing off of Ebb and Flow, then she can go into Zeke's if there's a Fed 80 Assassin, and that's going to happen a lot. You're going to see a lot of Fed Graves, a lot of Fed Zen, Zed, Talon. You know, people probably still break out Kha'Zix, Pyke, if there's a Pyke jungler or a Pyke middle. There's just almost an endless supply of very heavy, hard-hitting 80 champions right now in this meta. And so being a champion who can run Zeke's Convergence is really good. And when you can run Ardent and Zeke's, that's super strong, because now that Zeke's is going to give the Lucian an extra, 25% on-hit damage. So when he hits twice off his double shot, it's going to proc that twice. So the interaction between both Ardent and Zeke's to add in more attacks, more on-hit damage, is just gross. It's so good. And Zeke's gives you that extra armor to help protect you as well. So you're not going to be able to use the icy part of Zeke's. Let me just pull up Zeke's here really quickly, because that's an item that I've had several people ask me about in chat. And, you might say, well, why is this item showing up so much right now? Where did it go? There we go. And part of it is the other items have been nerfed. So specifically, like a Knight's Vow was nerfed a while ago. And then more recently, like Locket has been nerfed. And so this is becoming like a more go-to type of item. And then also it has the 60 armor on it. You got to remember that if we're in a tank meta that's dominated by like AP damage tanks, so if we're seeing like a bunch of Sejuanis and Zacs, and stuff like that, then you don't need the 60 armor as much. Like, it's nice, but the fights are going to go on for a long time. And, on a lot of supports, especially Enchanter type of supports, you'd rather just get scaling items, right? You'd rather get a Redemption and a Mikhail's and things like that if fights are going to last for a really long time. But now that fights are over in like 5 seconds or less, because everybody is playing an AD assassin, then having that 60 armor is a very big deal. And so that's why we'll talk about Rakan in a second. But that's why we've kind of seen a Rakan revival lately, is because people are starting to get Zeke's Ardent on Rakan, and it's very strong. So this item has always been cost efficient, right? That's never been a question. It's always been cost efficient. It's just, do you want to pay for the armor? Right? Do you want to pay for the armor, or would you rather have more plus healing and shielding? So would you rather get something like Redemption and Mikhail's and Ardent Sensor? Another thing is games are speeding up. The plus healing and shielding really starts to come online once you get 3 items, right? So once you get Redemption plus Ardent Sensor plus Mikhail's, you get that 40% plus healing and shielding. That's when you start doing the big healing and shielding. But this is one of the best, if not the best, single item power spikes in the game, because it gives you some really nice defense, but it also gives your AD carry an immediate plus 25% on hit damage. Compare this to something like Ardent Sensor, which is still very good, but if you look at Ardent Sensor, if you pick this up early, it's only giving, if you get it around level 9, it's only giving 12 on hit magic damage. Right? Versus Zeke's, which it says it's 50 bonus magic damage on hit over 50 seconds, but it's 25 on hit. And they changed this a while ago. If we look at kind of the history of this item, it used to only give 17.5. And if you watch this channel for a long time, I mentioned this and I said it was a very big deal. Back in 7.19 when this happened, they reduced the cost of it. And then it went from 17.5 on hit to 25% on hit. So if you're AD carry, and don't forget of the basic attacks damage. Okay, so it doesn't include, so if they have other on hit effects, it doesn't stack with that. But even if they, are only hitting for like 100, and let's say they're hitting for 150, You know, getting that extra 25%. I can't do that right off the top of my head. If it was 160, it would be 40 extra damage. So it's probably like 37.5 damage or whatever. But it's like 40 on hit damage, basically. So like once your AD carry completes Essence Reaver and they get that, 70 attack damage, and then they naturally have something like 70 or 80 attack damage, off of that first item, then, Ardent Sensor is going to give you an extra, 12 on hit damage versus Zeke's is going to give you an extra 40 on hit damage. So that's pretty gross. So that's why it's a lot of damage, and now it's becoming popular, like I said, because the meta has sped up tremendously, and it's really important that you have that really powerful single item, boom, power spike. Now, this doesn't synergize with other stuff. That's the thing. It's like, yeah, Ardent Sensor might be weaker early. It does give attack speed as well, which is really strong, and it has a really awesome suite of abilities, right? So it's got ability power, cooldown reduction, plus healing and shielding, mana regen, movement speed. It's got all this insanity, and then it also has, this 30 to 60, and it can affect multiple targets. So on some champions like Sona, you could give your whole team this buff, right? And so then all of a sudden, it's not 12 damage, it's, 60 damage to your whole team, and you give out all this. So Ardent is way better if you put it on a bunch of different champions over time, if you're a champion that can spread this around to different people, and it can happen all the time. It doesn't have to be your ult that triggers it. Right, so Zeke's is better, like single item power spike. It's just you and your AD carry, and you're just going in for the kill early on, and it has 60 armor. So that's the big thing. Is it's really good. It's really well positioned in this meta with the 60 armor, and it gives you much bigger power spike off of just one item when you're still doing that 2v2 bot lane a lot of times. So it's just that immediate power spike, which is more appropriate for really fast games. So Ardent is still quite good. It's just Zeke's is a little bit better early on. And there aren't a lot of champions that'll get both of these items. There are some that can do it. But Nami is one of them, circling back to Nami, who can get those items. So if she has to, if they have a Zed that goes like 3-0, then you can get a Zeke's. And if you get Zeke's plus Ardent, well, that's really, really strong in that case. So that's why Nami's so strong, just to kind of sum it all up here, is because she has really good healing in lane, she has really good trading and fighting, she's the best trader in lane, bot lane, she has excellent synergy with both specifically Lucian, but also Kai'Sa and anyone else who does a lot of on-hit damage. She's pretty good with Ezreal as well, because his Q, like his poke, also procs Tidecaller's Blessing, so it's easy for him to use those charges on people. It also slows them down, so if Ezreal goes Trinity Force now, and more Ezreals are doing Trinity Force instead of Iceborne Gauntlet, then this will allow him to kite people even better, because then he's going to get the Phage proc for the movement speed, and he's going to slow them down with Tidecaller. So once they're slowed down, once you hit them with that first Q and they're slowed, it makes it much easier to hit them with subsequent Qs. So I think that is very good. So just really good combination with Ezreal, with Lucian, and with Kai'Sa. So very, very well positioned, and she's very versatile in her build. She can go for the full Enchanter, but she can also sneak a Zeke's in there if she wants to. Because she has so much CC, she can afford to sacrifice some of that plus healing and shielding because it's only on one ability. Okay, so Nami, super powerful right now. Next champion that I think has risen up quite a lot is Rakan. Now, I just kind of rediscovered Rakan in the last couple of weeks. I had him much lower, but I was building him the wrong way. I was trying to build him like a lot of, you'll see a lot of high-end challenger players build him, and that's just inappropriate for a lot of solo queues. So let me pull up Rakan here. So you'll see a lot of people tell you that you should get multiple points in Q. You should get somewhere between 3 to 5 points in Q in lane. You should take Spell Thieves. You should take area and just go for all this harass in lane. No, it's bad. So if you've ever actually tried to do something like that as Rakan, you'll know that this Q is really hard to hit a lot of the time. It has a terrible hitbox. There's no way it's 900 range. It says it's 900 range. I am very skeptical of that. It feels like it's just really short. It has a really slender hitbox, has a pretty long cooldown. Even if you get multiple points in it, like 3 points, it's still a 9-second cooldown. So you can't really spam it that well. And if you land it, it's not even that much of a payoff. Like, yeah, you heal for a little bit, right? You know, you're going to heal for whatever, like 30 damage or something like that, which is nice. But you're just not going to hit it that much in lane. And your auto attack range is so low, you know, it's only 300 range. You're not going to be autoing people. So you're not going to be able to proc your Spell Thieves that often because you can only throw this once, you know, every 9 seconds at level 5. And you better hit it every single time, or you're just going to be sitting there on Spell Thief procs. Every time you miss this, you're missing out on a Spell Thief proc. Because you need to land one auto attack or one spell at least every 10 seconds to maximize the Spell Thieves. So that's, you know, that's kind of the problem, is that you just can't use this that well. It just sucks in lane. And even if you hit them with this, you're not going to poke them out. You're just not. Like, it's just not enough damage in the early game to really matter that much. Now, yeah, you can try to go all in with Grand Entrance, but having a little bit of extra AP, having a little bit of extra on-hit damage, I don't think is going to be, you know, that big of a deal. It's okay. Sure, it's okay to do a little bit of extra damage, but I just think that running Spell Thief, especially on a champion that has very suspect poke, someone like Rakan, where it's very conditional and it's very easy for the enemy to counterplay it, it's just a bad way to go. So I've just kind of rediscovered, and I think it's way better to just go ahead and max your W first. It lowers the cooldown by a lot, by 1.5 seconds every time, and it's the same damage as Q, and it has a little bit of a higher ratio, but the big thing is that's your crowd control, right? That knocks somebody up for 1 second. So being able to knock somebody up for 1 second is a very big deal. It's really nice to help peel your AD carry, or sometimes even just to engage on people. Sometimes even just to jump over a wall when you're trying to escape, or you're trying to get to a hot situation, and you just need to jump over walls to get there faster. That's really, really useful, because in theory, if you're rotating, you know, you can use this to jump over, you know, a key wall in the jungle to get to a fight, you know, 5 seconds later, and then it's going to be up again, pretty much, after CDR. So I think it's way better. You know, there's an argument also that you could max out your Battle Dance second in some really important fights, but I think that I think I would probably still go with W most of the time. And I think a lot of top-end players are kind of realizing this again, and like you even saw some pro players at MSI running Nomad's Medallion instead of Spell Thieves early on for this reason. And so I think that that's just a much better play style. You know, just because you're not going to be landing a lot of consistent poke, and you're sacrificing too much. Like, you're sacrificing points in Grand Entrance, which is really nice. You're sacrificing a ton of gold by not running Nomads. You're sacrificing an important rune slot to go something like Scorch, which you can't proc very easily unless you're landing a lot of Qs. So even if you just go watch a stream of like a professional Rakan player, like someone in Challenger, and just see how many times they actually land that Q in lane. Like, I remember watching Smoothie. This was months and months ago. This was like sometime last year probably. Playing Rakan, and he was, you know, going for the 3 points in Q early on, and I was just sitting there watching how many times he hit the Q in lane. He probably hit a Q like you know, maybe once per minute. Maybe. Probably not even that. Like, it was very, very rare. And I was just thinking to myself, why would somebody level that up when it's so inconsistent when you don't land it? So watch the games yourself. Actually sit there and count and keep track. How many times do I land this Q in lane? And the higher the elo gets, the less likely you are to hit it. So sorry, I had to take a quick swig there. Now that I've changed it up, now that I'm maxing W again and getting Nomad's Medallion and switching up the runes, it's way, way better. So I'm recommending this rune set. I don't think that Airy is really worth it early on if you're not going for the Q max and landing a lot of Qs. It's decent late game, but if you like look and compare this, like, look at these runes, Guardian versus Airy. So here's the thing to think about. Okay, you're getting Bone Plating and Chrysalis no matter what. All right, that's not a question. You're also going to get Nimbus Cloak and Celerity no matter what. So it doesn't matter. You're going to get Sorcery. You're going to get Resolve. It's just the question is, okay, what would you rather have? This tree and this tree. Okay, so which one's going to be your secondary? Because this is going to be the same. And Nimbus Cloak is amazing on Rakan, by the way. If you haven't tried that yet, this is insanely good. You know, when you go in, it doesn't make it faster right when you use your ult, but after you stall there and knock somebody up, then you get that 100 movement speed. It lets you run out or run and tag other people so much better. Because one of the big challenges with Rakan is you go in, you hit that first person with your ult, but then the question becomes, do you try to run around and tag other people? Or do you try to E back out? Because what will happen sometimes, you try to run in and tag somebody else with it, then your allies will move out of range and you can't E back out, or you get crowd controlled and you can't E back out. So it's very dangerous. But this Nimbus Cloak makes it much easier to go in there, hit your primary target, and then tag 1 or 2 secondaries and get out alive. So very, very good. So yeah, they did get rid of Ultimate Hat, which that does kind of suck because I really like that on Rakan. In theory, you could go for, I don't know, you really want Nimbus Cloak. So, I mean, if you go Airy, you could go Airy, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, and then just get, Ulti Hunter and maybe something like Zombie Ward. That's a viable build, but you're going to be very squishy if you don't have any Resolve. So, I don't know. It's interesting, but, not having Ulti Hat does feel kind of bad on Rakan. Having that 15% CDR is very good, but at the same time, this Nimbus Cloak is so awesome that it's okay. At a very minimum, it's a wash. It's like an even trade, but I think Nimbus Cloak is even better than that was. So that's the question. So you're getting these no matter what. Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Bone Plating, Chrysalis. Just what do you want? Okay. So if you don't go Scorch early on, which you should not go Scorch unless you're doing the Q-Max build with Spell Thieves, it's just not going to be worth it to go Scorch. So then the question is Water Walking or Gathering Storm. Now, Gathering Storm is good if you get to 30 minutes, but a lot of games are closing out in 20 to 25 minutes. It's a very fast meta, especially since they made the towers a lot weaker. So this loses some of its value because it doesn't do anything in the early game. Now, Water Walking is nice. Just for the extra 25 bonus movement speed in the river alone is very good. So if you think you're going to be roaming a lot up and down that river, that can be kind of useful, but it's just kind of it's okay. It's okay. And then what you would get over here would be, of course, Revitalize, which is quite nice, right? So this is going to give you a lot of extra plus healing and shielding. So in the late game, when you get Ardent Sensor plus Redemption, that's very good because, of course, Revitalize applies to Redemption. It applies to your own shield. It applies to your Q. It's just a really, really good ability. So I think that Revitalize is probably better than either Water Walking or Scorch on Rakan because it helps you out in the early game. If you actually do land a couple of those Qs, you get a bit more healing. And it scales really well later on into the game. So I think this is better. You should probably never get Overgrowth or Unflinching on Rakan. It's just not going to be worth it. If they have a lot of CC, maybe you could go Unflinching, but you're probably going to die even if you get the 10% Tenacity. Right, you probably just would need to buy a Quicksilver Sash if they have a lot of CC. But yeah, so I think this is at least as good as these, if not better, right, than these options. So this is kind of a push, maybe a slight favor to Resolve. So it really comes down to what do you want then? Do you want Guardian or do you want Airy? So Airy, obviously, early on can do damage. That's the main advantage of Airy over Guardian in the comparisons, is that Airy does damage early and then transitions into shielding later. So that's why you'll see Airy almost all the time on Nami, Janna, Lulu, Sona, everybody, because you can use the damage early. It's a lot, basically doing that extra 15 on-hit damage early. But with Rakan, you can't really auto-attack people that much, so once again, how often are you going to be hitting those Qs in the laning phase? I'm going to say not very. And so you're not going to be getting a ton of damage off of Airy early in the game. Yeah, you'll get a little bit, If you land maybe 3 Qs per minute, then you'll get an extra 45 damage in there. So that's nice. It's nice. That's like an extra auto attack worth of damage. So it's pretty good. I really don't think that it's going to matter that much just because you don't have consistent poke in the laning phase. And if you start comparing the shield, it's 30 to 80. Versus this shield later on in the game goes 70 to 150. Now, of course, the big difference here is cooldown reduction, right? Or cooldown rather. So Airy later on in the game is going to be up, every 3 or 4 seconds. She'll come back to you. So you could potentially get this off in multiple times in a fight. But keep in mind, once again, that fights are very quick. So a lot of fights are done in 5 to 10 seconds now. So you're not going to get off that many Aries. You know, if you're thinking about how fights are actually going to go down late game, you're going to RN, you know, RWN, stun somebody, you know, shield back to your team, maybe like throw a Q in there, maybe shield a second time, land a couple of auto attacks, and it's done. Like, fight's over most of the time. And so, yeah, in theory, you could get off multiple Aries, but it's probably not going to happen. So late game, just having that huge burst of a shield is really nice for keeping you alive and your ally. Don't forget, this is a double shield. It shields you, and it shields your ally, and it gives you movement speed. So it's going to help them get away from very sticky situations, and help you get away from sticky situations. And this is really nice for protecting against things like Zed, right? Or like these other assassins, things like Rengar. So when you go to shield your AD carry, you know, having this dinky little, you know, airy shield that's got a 25% AP ratio, and it's got, like, you know, in the mid game a 40 base, it's just not going to give you as much protection as something that's going to have like 110 base with a 0.25 ratio and 12% bonus HP. Now, you're not going to get a lot of bonus HP on Rakan. But I think, now, yeah, once again, it's going to have a bigger cooldown. It's going to have a 50-second cooldown. But, you know, that's going to be, you're only going to use it once, right? Every 50 seconds or so when you get into a big fight later on in the game. So I think a lot of times Rakan is about as even as Aerie is, and sometimes it's even better, especially for these all-in burst, you know, assassin type of encounters. I think that it could potentially even be better. And so that's why I've been transitioning over, you know, since I'm not committing to the early game harassment playstyle here, just going Guardian, Bone Plating, Chrysalis, Revitalize, and then secondary Nimbus and Celerity. I think it's great. It gives you a lot of survivability and a lot more kind of utility earlier on in the game. And it's a lot better against assassins because it protects both you and the AD carry with a pretty sizable shield. So that's what I would go on Rakan lately. And then I think going Nomad's Medallion early on, Ionian Boots, and then getting Glacial Shroud is awesome. It gives you 30% CDR. You just want as much CDR as you can possibly get early on. Then you complete that Zeke, so that's a huge power spike, and then you get Ardent Sensor because you can run both of them. And then you can get whatever you want after that. Usually, you know, going into Redemption is helpful. If they have a lot of CC, you can get a Quicksilver Sash. In theory, you could get something like a Locket. I think the Redemption's better most of the time than Locket is. But for Rakan. But that is an option that's out there as well. So I think that Rakan is really good right now because he's very good against assassins. He's very safe. You know, he's probably the safest support out there because of that W. Not only does he have W to jump away, but he also has a shield, so he can jump twice, basically blink to allies with his E. And in a pinch, he can even ult, touch the enemy, and then just run away because he gets that extra movement speed. And now he's going to get a ton of movement speed off of Nimbus Cloak. So he gets the 50% bonus movement speed off of his ult, and then he's going to get that extra 100 flat off of Nimbus Cloak. So you're not catching him if he ults you and runs away. So super safe, and then he has that self-shield that regenerates over time. You can build him with a Zeke's and Guardian, so he's just a nightmare to try to kill. And he's a nightmare for assassins because, you know, all he has to do is shield the ally. It's going to put Guardian on him, just press his ult, and that's going to crowd control him. So you've got a Zed that tries to go in, assassinate your AD carry, no problem. Just E onto him, press R, he's going to get charmed as soon as he appears. W to knock him up, Q to trigger the heal, you know, shield back onto your ally. Just makes it really, really hard to cut through all that stuff to kill somebody. And you can't aim for him either because he's going to have a lot of armor, right? And he's going to be able to get away. So unlike something like a Janna or like a Sona or something like that, where if you actually get on the Enchanter, you can probably kill them. You can't probably kill Rakan a lot of the time unless you're really, really far ahead. So he's just a real pest. He has a lot of CC. He's very difficult to pick off. He also has really good engage. Everybody knows that, but think of the champions that everyone's playing this day and age. Nobody's playing engage. Like, you just don't see Sejuani's anymore. You don't see Zax anymore. Like, everybody's playing these squishy assassin champions. You know, it's not uncommon to see, like, top lane Irelia, you know, mid lane Zed, jungle Graves, bot lane Kaisa or something like that. Like, nobody has crowd control. Nobody has engage. And so playing someone like Rakan, who can get both of those powerhouse items, both Zeke's and Ardent, and he has so much mobility and CC, and he has engage, is just awesome. So the only downside to Rakan is that he has a really weak laning phase, particularly with this build. He can get bullied out pre-6 by things like Nami. Nami will tear him up, levels 1 to 5. But at level 6, it's off to the races. You can definitely crowd control and blow some people up. So you just have to survive pre-6. You know, your AD carry, depending on what they play, might go down a little bit of CS. But if we're being honest, if you watch most AD carries, at least in my games, it's just a farm off. Most of the time in lane, they just sit there and watch each other farm, and it's just whoever CS is better. And it's really annoying when I play Nami and I'm sitting there trying to harass and put all this pressure in the lane, and the AD carry just sits there and watches. But that's what happens. In Plat Minus, most of the time, most AD carries just sit there and just farm. So if that happens, it doesn't matter what the laning phase is, right? It doesn't matter that Rakan has a really weak laning phase if they're not going to punish you for it. So I think that Rakan is still powerhouse. He's really good. Yeah, you know, they nerfed his Q. Who cares? What, they take 4 heal off of his Q? Oh no, you know, during the laning phase, you know, even if you land 3 Qs, which is ambitious, a lot of times in the laning phase, if you land 3 Qs, you lost like 12 health or something that you could have earned. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The Q nerf doesn't matter. The E nerf is a bit more significant. You're losing a total of 20 shield, but that's still 280 shield, right? With a 1.6 ratio versus Janna's shield, which is a strong shield, but Janna's shield is 210 with a 0.7. So he has twice the scaling on the shield and, you know, like 50% more base. Not quite 50%, but like a way higher base shield and way higher scaling. And it gives you basically 2 flashes. It's fine. It's still a good spell. So yeah, I think Rakan is super, super good right now. Like I said, he doesn't match up well against Nami early on, but he can definitely crush her potentially later on. So Rakan, super strong on this patch. All right, Soraka is somebody else, and we'll start talking a bit more. I just wanted to mention those two because kind of their build path and what they can do has changed. And, you know, these really are the 2 champions. If they're open, you should be taking them a lot in this meta. Okay, Soraka is another one who's becoming increasingly popular, and a lot of this is because people are getting 3 points of E in the laning phase. And I've had people kind of debate and say, well, why would you do that? Why is this goofy? Why have people, you know, started doing this lately and not before? Because I've had people in the past ask me, well, why don't you get multiple points in E? But, you know, the reason that you haven't really done this in the past is that Soraka's been kind of a scaler and a healer early on. But now, like with the new rune system, you can go something like a Spell Thieves plus Scorch plus E plus Airy, and it does a lot of harassment early on, a whole lot of harassment. So that's what's different. When people asked me this last season, what about Soraka with multiple points in E? It was bad, because the main thing that was really good last season was Windspeaker's Blessing, right? That was the rune you would always get. So, you know, there was no Scorch. There was no Airy. You know, Frostfang was way weaker last fall. So that's what's changed, is that now it's not so much... I'll put it to you this way. The thing is guaranteed procs on all of your runes and your Frostfang. That's what it's all about. Guaranteed that you're going to get the Scorch, you're going to get the Frostfang, and you're going to get Airy to hit them. That's what it's all about. So yeah, you can get multiple points in Q and lane, and this works kind of at lower elos, you know, like maybe silver, bronze, probably even into gold. You can land a lot of these Qs, but as you go up in ranking, it gets really, really hard to start hitting these Qs. So not only can people dodge them, but you have to get fairly close within 800 range, and that makes you very vulnerable to engages. So like Thresh can get on you, Rakan can get on you, a lot of champs can get at you, you know, when you're trying to land these star calls. Versus Equinox is 925 range. That's a much safer range for harassment. And the kicker is Equinox, you just press it on somebody and boom, instantly hits them. It's pretty much impossible to dodge. So that's kind of the main deal there. So like getting 3 points in Q is good, assuming you land every single Q. And I've had people say, oh, well, you know, a good Soraka will land this. Well, you could say the inverse of that is, well, a good opponent's going to dodge this, right? So you could say a good player would hit it, and a good player would dodge it. So that really isn't a great argument. If, just do like a Rakan, right? Go through and just see how many times you're hitting the star call in lane. If you're hitting the star call like 50% of the time or more, you can go ahead and get multiple points in star call. But if they're dodging it a lot, or you're finding yourself getting caught out and getting, engaged on a lot, then you need to switch over to Equinox. This is why you see challengers going Equinox, because other challengers dodge Q very easily, but you can't dodge Equinox. So that gives her pretty respectable harass in the early game. So I would probably get 3 points of Equinox. I think the most common build is 3 points in Equinox and then max your W in the mid game and just stay at 1 point in Star Call. So yeah, Star Call is way better if you land it. It's cheaper and it has this heal effect. And it does the same amount of damage, basically. And it has a lower cooldown. But Equinox is that guaranteed damage in order to proc Airy and Spell Thieves and all that stuff. So that's the thing. And in team fights, if someone actually manages to stay in this, then it does a ton of damage. It does up to 460 damage with an 80 ratio and a 2-second root. So if you're with someone like maybe a Jhin, and he... W's, and you're able to get this Equinox and get it to proc, then that could be a really, really strong combination. So that's part of what has made Soraka really good, is she's a really good lane bully, and she's really good at healing. So that healing is going to bring her up a lot, because now a lot more people aren't going to go fleet footwork, like I mentioned before with Nami. And so she's a very good healer, and she's really good, especially against teams that don't have engage. As I mentioned before with Rakan, very few teams are running hard engage these days. So she doesn't have to worry about that as much. So if she's just sitting there farming off with somebody like a Lulu or a Janna or whatever, she's going to outscale him, because her W ends up being on a 2-second cooldown, whereas something like a Janna shield is going to be on a 10-second cooldown. So you're just not going to be able to keep up with this healing late game. It's just insane. Now, yeah, people can get things like Mortal Reminder, but I would argue that Mortal Reminder got a lot worse on this patch, because now the Last Whisper is so terrible. Like, you're paying so much gold just for 10% armor pin. It's awful. And now it costs a lot more to get Mortal Reminder. So, yeah, they can get Executioner's Calling and just sit on it if you want to, but that's basically like an 800 gold tax just to try to deal with your healing. So, yeah, if they get it, it sucks. It's bad for you, but at least you're setting them back 800 gold, right? You're basically spotting your 80 carry, 800 gold worth of scaling. Okay, because they're going to fall behind. So your 80 carry is going to be completing Essence Reaver a lot faster, probably, when their 80 carry stops to get something like an Executioner's Calling first item. Okay. And then, of course, her ultimate is really good, has excellent global reach. So, she's just really strong against other enchanters. I wouldn't first pick her, but if you're 4th or 5th pick and they just don't have a lot of engage on their team, if they don't have assassins for some reason, I mean, even if they only have something like Graves or Zen, like people that you can keep in front of you that aren't going to be like flanking around and crowd controlling you from behind, then she can be really strong. You just got to watch out picking her into things like Zed, or picking her into things... Though they just nerfed Kha'Zix really hard, so you don't have to deal with him anymore. That type of thing they can get on you. So if they don't have flankers, if they don't have a lot of mobility, then she's really, really strong. So yeah, Soraka's a beast right now. I think she's really good. I just think that Rakan and Nami are just a little bit better, but Soraka is very, very powerful. And she's probably the highest scaling of these 3 champions. It's just, can you keep her safe? Right? Can you keep her safe and, stay healthy enough and safe enough where you can stay in the fight and heal people? Okay, Janna. I talk about Janna every patch. I won't spend a ton of time on her now. I pulled her down a little bit. She is very safe. She has great scaling. She's very reliable. She's very simple to play. It's still the same stuff, Airy to Chrysalis. I just moved her down a little bit because it's becoming a much faster game, and it takes her a while to come online because... like your shield starts off with like I think it's 18 or 20 second cooldown. So, Janna really starts to shine around, level 9 or 10 once you max out your E. You can max your E first, but it still won't be, maxed until level 9. And a lot of Jannas will still get multiple points in W and lane, and you're just going to get murdered and blown up. As soon as the 80 carry gets their first item, we're turning back into a first item meta instead of a 2 or 3 item meta. As soon as that Lucian gets Essence Reaver, or as soon as Kaisa gets Essence Reaver, or Gensu's, they're just going to be able to blow you up. And, things like Graves, Zen, they're just taking over the game so early. Janna's just not getting to that late game that she wants to a lot of times. And she's still really weak in the laning phase. And she has terrible matchups in the laning phase against Nami and Soraka. So, she's still awesome for late game. It's just a question of, are you going to be able to get to late game or not? And she works best with crit champions because how her shield works is it gives extra AD, which still works, on non-crit champions. So you can still get this with Lucian. You can still get this with, Kai'Sa, but it lasts for 5 seconds or until it breaks. And if someone critically strikes, the AD off of this scales into their crit. So, if you're just normally auto-attacking, you're dealing 40 extra damage with this, right? With the bonus AD. But if you critically strike, especially with the old Infinity Edge, you would deal 100 damage on that attack. So that made Eye of the Storm even stronger because the critical strike directly scaled with the AD that you're putting on them. Versus now that critical strike is dumpstered, like nobody in their right mind is going to be building a crit champion in a week or so once people figure it out. I had a Lucian last night. We got him so far ahead. Dude rushes Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon. I just about fell out of my chair. I was like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, get Essence Reaver. But he didn't do it. So that was a little disconcerting. But anyways, so she gets worse when there aren't crit champions because this doesn't scale as hard as it normally would because there's not going to be any critical strike off of that AD. Versus someone like Lulu, who has a lot of on-hit damage, right? So she has on-hit damage with her picks, and then she gives people a lot of extra attack speed, which off of her Whimsy, her W, which scales extremely well with Essence Reaver because the more you attack, the more your cooldowns come up off of that passive, Essence Flare. And then the more you're auto-attacking, because you're triggering Essence Flare, you're getting more abilities to go off, and then that's making picks go in more. And so it's just a really, really good chain of reactions with Lulu and people who want a lot of attack speed and who have special on-hit interactions. So Janna, still good at peeling Zen, still good at peeling Irelia and all these other people with their ult, so she's still high quality, but she's not going to be as good as someone like a Nami or a Lulu, especially early on in the laning phase, with a lot of the popular AD carries, or AD carries that will become very popular, like Lucian, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, things like that. So, still pretty good, just not quite as good as she was last patch. That's why I knocked her down just a little bit, but she's still strong. Morgana is another one who I had a little bit higher last patch. She's falling off some in my mind because there's so much AD running around and her shield doesn't block any AD damage whatsoever. So if that Zen, jumps on top of your AD carry and you try to black shield him, not going to stop him. That Graves, pops over a wall and starts blowing up your jungler, black shield's not going to do anything. And so that's the problem, is that just virtually nobody's running AP champions right now. Like, you'll see them sometimes in the middle, but a lot of comps are almost all AD. And so that makes that black shield lose a lot of its effectiveness. Yeah, you can still put it on people and prevent crowd control, but a lot of people aren't playing engaged champions either. They aren't playing crowd control champions. Like the super, the solo queue warrior team comp would be something like probably, Irelia top, Vlad mid, like Graves jungle, bot lane, either Lucian or Kai'Sa. Which one of those champions has crowd control? Pretty much nobody. And so you don't need the black shield. Like, if no one's doing magic damage and no one has any crowd control, then Black Shield loses a lot of its value. And if Black Shield doesn't have a lot of value, then Morgana is not going to be that great of a pick, right? I mean, like, her ult and her W are almost dead skills. Like, her ult is, like, okay for peeling. In the game, it's okay. But it's nowhere near the same kind of impact as a Janna ult, Soraka ult, Rakan ult, even Nami ult. Like, all of those are way, way stronger. Lulu ult. Like, it's just not it's just not in the same ballpark as a lot of these other AD carries in terms of high impact. And her W, you just pretty much keep it level 1 the whole game, and it just helps you push like levels 1 to 3, and then after that it's just worthless. So if Black Shield isn't great, then all you're left with is your Q, which is still good, but she's just losing a lot of her power right now. Now, she is still very good if they do have some crowd control, and you end up getting a very fed assassin, or a very fed Lucian or Kaiser or something like that, and you Black Shield them, then, you know, it's pretty good. And she's situationally good. Like, she's very good into Rakan. She's pretty good against, like, Fiddlesticks, who's becoming more popular, because you can Black Shield, and his fear won't go off. But overall, she's fallen just a little bit. She might deserve to even be tier 2 right now, but it's tough to say. I haven't really played against her a lot. I ban her almost every game because I want to play Rakan, and she's so good into Rakan. And she does get banned a lot. She's the most banned champion as support. She's got a 37% ban rate, pretty much, because people just don't like playing against her. Because it's just so hard to deal with a fed assassin if they have a Morgana, and she just Black Shields him. And there are so many assassins right now. So it's not that she's always overwhelming. It's just when she is, when her team gets that fed assassin, then she is very overwhelming. But if you're behind, and your assassins are all like 0-6, and, you know, they have all this 80 damage, it can just feel very worthless. Like, you just can't do anything. And so that's why I still have her, you know, as tier 1, just a little bit lower than you might see on some other tier lists. Okay, tier 2. So these are still really strong champions. I just don't think they're as good as these. I think that you can definitely make... I would, if your first pick, blind pick, I would definitely go either Nami or Rakan, probably. If you're a little bit later down the pick, if you're like 3rd or 4th, I think that Soraka and Janna can both be really, really strong. You can pick Janna blind pick, first pick too if you want. It's just a little more dangerous than it used to be because your laning phase is so suspect. And then Morgana, I would only play strictly as a counter pick to something like a Leona or a Thresh or like an Ashe or a Varus. You know, just something that you know they're going to have a lot of crowd control. Okay. So Lulu is pretty good right now. She's fallen off a little bit because she is really weak against Nami, particularly in the laning phase, because Nami just busts her up. She can just heal through all of her harass, and, you know, Lulu doesn't have any heal herself. And so the trades are usually dramatically favoring Lulu, and she's very squishy and very vulnerable, especially pre-6. If she gets ganked, she's almost certainly going to die. If she gets engaged on by a Leona, you know, she's probably going to die. So I think she can get bullied out early, but if you make it to the later in the game, and if she's able to get Ardent Sensor, then she can be very strong. She's another champion who could, in theory, get Zeke's if she wanted to also. So she could do Ardent Sensor plus Zeke's. And that can be, you know, very strong. And then also she's pretty good against assassins later on because she can just whimsy and crowd control them for 2.25 seconds. So, you know, pretty good against assassins. You have a low cooldown ult that works very well with Zeke's if you cast it, because you don't have a lot of benefit from plus healing and shielding stats, right? Like, you do have a shield, but your ultimate doesn't benefit from plus healing and shielding because it's an infusion of health. It's not a heal. So it's not affected by Ignite, but it's also not affected by plus healing and shielding. So, you know, I think that she's pretty good right now. She's pretty good. I'd probably rather play Nami a lot of the time, but if you get a really fed AD carry and you're able to put Whimsy on your AD carry with Zeke's, with Ardent Sensor, it's lights out. So she's particularly good with things like Kog'Maw and Twitch. So champions that get a lot of attack speed and, you know, just really have very, very strong on-hit interactions, whether it's stacking Twitch Poison or using the Kog'Maw, Bioarcane, Barrage, or whatever it is, your W. So, very good with very specific picks, particularly, like I said, Lulu, Cog, or not Lulu, Cog, Twitch, Cog, maybe Varus. She could be pretty good. Alright, Zyra just did get a buff on this patch. She is pretty strong. The main issue with Zyra is that she's just not safe. So you can get caught out and murdered by, you know, Graves, Zen, Talon, any number of assassins. Just absolutely blow her up. So she is very oppressive in lane. She's really good to pair with something like a Draven, where you just really want to kill people early on as much as possible. Maybe a Jhin. Maybe Lucian. But she does have really bad matchups into Ezreal and Lucian, particularly because they're so mobile. if you try to hit somebody with your E, it's so easy for Lucian to just dash to the side or Ezreal just to E away. So she's much better against like fairly short range, immobile champions, early on. Not even necessarily like super short range, but just things. She's good against like Tristana, Kog'Maw, Jinx, Varus to a lesser extent because he can ult you once he's 6 and blow you up. But she's okay. They just did give her a bit more root duration, which is nice, but it still doesn't fix the fact that that she's so vulnerable to assassins and that she's not good against highly mobile champions, which you're going to see a lot of that. But you're going to see a lot of Lucian. You're going to see a lot of Ezreal in the bot lane, so that's problematic. Now, she does do a lot of magic damage, though, so that can be useful. So if you have a 4 AD comp, if you have the... if you got Lucian bot lane, Zen in the jungle, mid lane Talon, and top lane Fiora or something like that, then, Zyra could be a pretty good pick because you need some kind of AP on your team to try to punish them for going all armor on the enemy team. So that is something to consider, but I think that overall she's going to be fairly weak. Now, I know that Mean Bunny, this is a Mean Bunny special here, but I think that Braum is actually going to move up a little bit for once. So shout out to you, Mean Bunny. That's my boy. I know he's been a big fan of Braum for however long he's been on the channel, a year and a half. So I do think that Braum's actually going to move up a little bit now. A little bit. And I think he's viable again. And the reason for this is he's very good against what will become a lot of the top picks. So in particular, he is awesome with Lucian. Very, very good with Lucian because each one of Lucian's shots stacks concussive blows. So usually you have to hit the person 4 times, but with Lucian, you just, Braum hits him with a Q, Lucian, dashes in, double attacks, and then just one more attack, and boom, they're stunned. And so he is able to stun people so quickly. Lucian is. So that's super good. He's also pretty good against Lucian because he can put up his Unbreakable and block Lucian's ult. He can also, Zaya's probably still going to be popular. He can block Zyra feathers. He can block Twitch ult with his Unbreakable. There's just a lot of interactions that are very powerful with him. And he's very good on ganks. So if your jungler comes down and ganks for you bot lane, you can jump to the jungler with Stand Behind Me and then just hit him with a Winter's Bite. And they're probably going to die even if they flash. So he's very, very good with ganks. He's very good with Lucian. He's very good against Nami in particular because his shield will block her wave. And it's so slow moving, you have like all day to jump in front and block that wave. So being able to block the wave is really nice as well. And a lot of these squishy enchanters bottom, if you just get that slow on him, you're going to be able to run him down and kill him. And even if it's not Lucian, he's pretty good with Kai'Sa too, because Kai'Sa can jump in, do her aggressive thing, and then you can jump right on top of him with your W also. You can follow that up and, hit him with either your ult or Winter's Bite and off to the races. So Braum is very good with other champions that are highly mobile. So other champions that jump in, he can jump to them with Stand Behind Me and get in their face. So I think that makes him very good, particularly, like I said, if you have a Lucian, if you're against a Nami, like they're very good matchups for him. Now, he is a little bit on the weak side to champions like Morgana, can block his stun with her Black Shield, and he just can get outscaled by Janna and by Soraka. But, Janna, these champions will still be popular, so that is definitely an issue. But if you have that Lucian, if you have the Zen jungler or something like that, then you can camp and kill these champions pretty easily early on. So I think that that's pretty nice. He can go Zeke's early on. It's kind of a shame that his ultimate's on such a long cooldown. I wish they'd lower the ult to like 120 seconds. 140 just seems really long. Because it's nice, but it's not like a super game-breaking ult. I mean, let's put it this way. If Rakan's ult's on 110-second cooldown, and that's like one of the best ults in the game, then I would think that, Braum's could be 120. Pretty standard, maybe at least 130. So I don't know, but the story is it's 140, so it's a bit longer of a cooldown. That's kind of a feels bad for Zeke's, but Zeke's is still very good on him, especially because you're going to be able to slow them and stick to them, so that they'll stay in your little blizzard that you have around yourself. So I think it's pretty good. So you can go something like a Zeke's into Knight's Vow and still be pretty good. The problem, though, if you have Targons, it doesn't have any cooldown reduction on it, so you have to go all the way up to the tier 3 to get your CDR. I wish they would just make the tier 2 have the CDR. That would help out tanks a ton. So the itemization is not amazing on him, but Zeke's Knight's Vow is good, and obviously he's very good in a meta that's going to be dominated by 80 assassins because he's really hard to kill. So I think that you'll start to see him rise in popularity primarily with Lucian, because, you know, Lucian is just insane with this guy because of how fast you can proc his passive. That's an old school combo, and since Lucian's going to be like super oppressive right now, I expect you're going to start to see a bit more Braum. Very, very good. Okay, Leona's another person that I moved up here. So Leona moved up a little bit just because it's becoming a much faster, more aggressive game, and that's what Leona wants. You know, she's going to get outscaled by the Jannas and the Sorakas at 30 minutes, but most games aren't lasting 30 minutes. And so, yeah, I mean, she has really sweet engage, and a lot of AD carries, a lot of the best AD carries are going to be single item power spike. So it's going to be Essence Reaver, you know, on a lot of these champions. Essence Reaver Xayah, Essence Reaver Lucian, Essence Reaver Kai'Sa. All of these champions are going to be looking to brawl and fight as soon as they get their first item, and that's what Leona wants. She wants to get in there, get those kills early on, start roaming around, kind of like Braum. She's very hard for people to pick off because she's so tanky in a team fight. And, I mean, you can even go, like, a really aggressive build. Like, I have Press the Attack here. I've seen that looks pretty good. Now, if you're playing with a Lucian on your team, he's already going to have Press the Attack, so you probably wouldn't want to take it. You'd want to take something else. But she could even run, if you want to go really aggressive, you could run something like Electrocute plus, you know, Sudden Impact, and then go Ulti Hunter to get even more ults, because your ult is really powerful, and it's on a relatively short cooldown. I think it's it's not 90 seconds, is it? It's really short. It is 90 seconds, so it's just like an insanely short cooldown ult. So that makes her really good with Zeke's also. You just pop that Essence Flare, or the Solar Flare rather, go in there, trigger that Zeke's, and just off to the races once they get their Essence Reaver. So that is really, really nice. You know, you could also go for, if you wanted to, you know, you could go for something like a Nimbus Cloak as well, help you stick to some people a little bit better. Usually she doesn't have a hard time going in, but that's an option. I think that might be a little weird, but I could definitely see people on her going either Press the Attack or Electrocute early on, and then if you go the Electrocute, Sudden Impact, maybe Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collection. Probably just Zombie Ward, and then Ultimate Hunter. Could be really nice. I still like the Press the Attack build if your AD carry doesn't have Press the Attack, but I think a lot of champs are going to start building that. So you could start doing something like, you know, Press the Attack, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and that would be pretty nice. Because Press the Attack is so easy to trigger with her, because whenever you go in, you just auto-attack, and then your Q is an auto-attack reset, so that gives you one more trigger, and then you just auto-attack them again after that, and it would trigger Press the Attack. So it's really easy for her to trigger it. And that gives a nice buff to your whole team who tries to damage that one champion. So that's good. Whatever you do, you go Bone Plating and Chrysalis as your secondary most of the time. I mean, you could go, if you're in a heavy poke lane, maybe against a Nami, you could go Second Wind early on, or you could also get Conditioning. Everything in that tree is pretty good to an extent. But, you know, I think Chrysalis is strong as well. So Bone Plating plus something as your secondary. So if they don't have Press the Attack, you can do Press the Attack. If they do, if your AD carry does have Press the Attack, I think that Electrocute is a pretty good option. I mean, you could go Aftershock as well. You know, I guess with that build, you just go something like Aftershock, Bone Plating, Chrysalis. It's just that last rune is so terrible. I guess you would have to get the Tenacity one, Unflinching, and then as your secondary, I guess you could go either Sudden Impact and Ulti Hunter, or you could go just something generic like Cosmic Insight and like Boots. But either way, I think she's getting very, very well positioned, and she's very good against a lot of these squishy champions. She's very good against Rakan also. She has so much CC, and she has Engage, which a lot of teams are lacking. So I think that she is getting positioned to be pretty good in this meta. I don't think she's quite tier 1. She could be higher in tier 2, but it's definitely becoming a Leona kind of meta right now, I think, because it's just so much action in the early game now. and it's just a huge dearth of CC and engage and tankiness on every team. That just having that one tank that can get in there and cause a lot of fights and just does a ton of damage early on, and I think that's just Leona. So excellent pairing with something like a Lucian or a Draven or just somebody who really wants to fight and take over the early game. Fiddlesticks is another one that's rising in popularity. I just made a video about him. He is nice because he's an AP champion, first of all. So in this meta where everybody's running AD, having an AP option is nice. And something that's different about him from Zyra is that he has really nice CC. Just point, click, fear somebody. This is amazing against assassins in the mid game. It's so good. You know, Xin Zhao tries to run in. I guess Zen's not technically an assassin, but pretty much he is. Tries to run in, you just fear him. Or like Rengar tries to run in, you just fear him. Like, it's just really, really nice. Being able to use that fear. Then he has pretty high base damages with Drain and Terrify. And you can just spam this Dark Wind. So if people aren't going to be running Fleet Footwork as much early on, if you're going to be able to stick some of this harassment, then he can be pretty good. So you can get up to like 3 points of Dark Wind in lane if you're landing a lot of good harassment. He also pushes waves really well, so you can get them into their tower, start making a miss CS, get some chip damage on that tower. So he has really good poke early on. His laning phase is not amazing, but they'll never get to engage on you because you just spam Dark Wind on the wave, and they're going to constantly be in their tower. So I think that does make him particularly strong. And then, of course, his ultimate is just absolutely amazing. They lowered the cooldown also, especially starting level 11. It's 30 seconds down now instead of 20. So that is very nice. And he has really high base damages. So you can afford to get a utility item like a Zhonya's Hourglass early on, which is good too because it gives you AD, or armor rather, which helps protect you against AD a little bit so you don't get bursted out. So I think that's pretty good because he can rush Zhonya's. It's a nice build path. He doesn't have to rush something like Leandri's, which is much more expensive. He can just opt early on just to get the, some Ionian boots for the cooldown, Frostfang, and then Zhonya's, and be very, very strong with a lot of CDR. So I think that he's good. Now, he can get bullied out, by other AP champions in lane, most notably Zyra, because he's so short range. He can get poked out. You can heal a little bit with Drain off of cannon minions, but that's kind of a tough matchup. But he is very good against a lot of these enchanters as well, who aren't going to have a lot of magic resist. If you can ult in right on top of them and fear them immediately, then he can definitely blow up something like a Janna or a Lulu or a Nami or a Soraka or whatever. Fiddlesticks is really all about pushing in early, getting an advantage, and getting a lot of vision and denying vision from the enemy. He's basically just like a litmus test for your vision game, right? Are you really good at vision? Can you deny the enemy vision really well? If you are, Fiddlesticks is going to be amazing. If you have a hard time denying vision, or if you don't ward enough, then Fiddlesticks is terrible. So it just comes down to how well are you warding, how strong is your vision. I do have a video on the channel to help you with that. Watch my 5 tips with better macro under my topical videos. It'll tell you all about how to secure vision. Or you can just watch the Fiddlesticks guide that I just released today. Or yesterday, actually. Where is that Fiddlesticks guide? I thought I had it in here somewhere. Let me go ahead and link it in that Google Doc. I forgot to do that. However, sorry about that. Here we go. So yeah, I think I just released this either yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. But I'll go ahead and put that in the Fiddle wiki here before I forget. There we go. So now I've got it linked there for you. If you want to go check that out. Okay. So yeah, Fiddlesticks definitely gaining some real estate here as well. Sona still pretty strong, and we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. I don't want it to be too terribly long. But Sona still strong, still weak to assassins. Not much changed here. She's a late game monster once she gets 3+ healing and shielding items. But, it's a question of, well, can you get to there? You might consider, and this is something I forgot to mention with Soraka, a lot of Sorakas have started taking Barrier, early on because they don't have a lot of kill pressure in lane anyway, so Ignite doesn't have that much value, and then you need to play really far back in a lot of fights, and so you're not going to be able to Ignite key targets anyways. You could go with Exhaust, but sometimes Exhaust is just a little bit slow and it has a longer cooldown. So a lot of people have been running with Barrier lately on Soraka, and like if we check this out, if we just go to Pro Builds, just to show you, I'm not making this up. Hopefully, I haven't looked. We'll see. But yeah, as you can see, so many people are running Barrier now. There's a lot of Barrier. And the thought process behind that is sometimes Exhaust is just too slow. And if it's a long-range champion, you know, if you're getting hit with, like, Jhin ult or Xerath ult, or you're about to get busted by, like, a Lux ult or something, you can't get close enough to Exhaust. And this is on a much shorter cooldown, so I'm pretty sure Exhaust... did they nerf it fairly recently? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they nerfed Exhaust and buffed Ignite. But yeah, it's a pretty long cooldown. There we go. So let's check this out here. Do they have the updated, yeah, 180 seconds. So it's just a 3-minute cooldown. I'm pretty sure it's 240 for Exhaust. 210. Okay, so not as bad. If this is updated. I'm not even entirely sure if this is updated, but I'm pretty sure they nerfed it at some point. They may not have cataloged that. I'm almost certain that they nerfed Exhaust this season. No, they nerfed Heal. They nerfed Heal. That's what it was. And so they buffed Ignite and nerfed Heal. Either way, like, this is pretty good, but the thought process behind Barrier is it's going to block a lot more damage, especially in the early to mid game, than Exhaust will. Now, Exhaust is going to block a lot, probably block more. You know, if the enemy assassin has, like, 4 items or something, it's going to block more. But you're probably going to die at that point anyways, even though Exhaust is going to block more of it. So it's okay, but the thought process is that Barrier is a much shorter cooldown. Early on, it's going to block more damage than Exhaust does, and it works against ranged champions as well. So that's why a lot of Sorakas have started running Barrier. And I think that Sona would be a good candidate for that too. I don't know why not, right? So she's a very similar thing to Soraka. She's very squishy, very vulnerable, doesn't want to get up too close to the action. So I could see running Barrier on Sona as well. So that might be one innovation that you could try out. I haven't tried it, but it sounds good to me. Seems to be working for Soraka. Because Sona's not going to have kill threat in lane either. I mean, I guess once she gets to 6, you kind of do. So maybe there's an argument to get Ignite there, just because at level 6 you might kill him. So I could see that. But if you're against something really scary, like if they have a Talon middle or something like that, then you might want to consider taking a Barrier. Potentially. But there is the argument for Ignite, because you do have an ultimate that does a pretty good chunk of damage in crowd controls at level 6. Okay, Blitzcrank's another one. You know, if there's a lot of enchanters that are running around, then Blitzcrank's going to be really good, right? If he lands those hooks on squishy champions, then he's going to kill them. So Blitzcrank, if you land the hooks, he's good. If you don't, he's bad. I mean, that's pretty much the whole story of Blitzcrank. Doesn't really matter what the items are. Doesn't really matter what the runes are. It just all comes down to, do you land that hook or not? So that's Blitzcrank, and he's still the same. All right, Alistar, pretty good right now. I'd probably rather play Leona or Braum over Alistar at this point, just because I think they play a lot better for the reasons I described. Right, like Leona is very, very good with Zeke's because she has a proactive ultimate that you want to use on cooldown that gives a lot of extra damage. That's on a short cooldown, so I think that's really good. And then Braum just has such great synergy with Lucian, so good with Lucian, so good against Nami. He's just really well positioned with the types of champions that are going to be strong right now. Now, Alistar does have some pretty good all-in potential early on. His damage is a bit light compared to some other champs. Like, he still does decent damage with his combo plus his E, but his ult doesn't do any damage. So he's okay. He's alright. I just feel like you know, that Braum and Leona are just better all in, just bust them up and kill some people. champions, especially in the early game. Karma, I have up here. You know, I could very easily put Tarek here. They're almost interchangeable, even though they're different champions. It's like, it's okay. There's just not really a reason to play Karma. Like, she pokes early. You know, she lost Ulti Hat, which kind of sucks. She could go to Ulti Hunter if she wanted to. She's not, she can get the movement speed off a Nimbus Cloak, but what are you going to do with that? I guess you can, like, run away. You can stick to people with your W a little bit better, maybe. I just don't think that she has enough all-in potential and kill threat as some of these other champions out there. So, you know, she's all right. I've seen, like, Low Pally and stuff, like, put her as his number 1 or, like, number 2 or something the last few patches. It just statistically doesn't bear out. I mean, she's only got a 47% win rate, you know, and that's really bad. That's really bad when enchanters are dominating. Like, the top 6 champions right now are all enchanters. They all have over a 50% win rate. They're all really strong, and then she's sitting down there with a 47%. I mean, that is a red flag that when she is a member of the highest class of champion right now as support, the most successful class of champion, that she's not even, like, that she's not even in the top 10. She's not even in the top 20. She's near the bottom. So, yeah, percentage isn't everything. You know, like I said, I'm kind of recommending Braum right now, even though he only has, like, a 47 or something percent win rate. Where is old Braum? I'm just overlooking him. There's Tom. Tom's really low. Tom is really bad right now. Even though I love him. Yeah, he's at 48%. But I think that that's going to rise. It's only been a few days of the new patch, and not everyone's figured out why he's going to be so strong right now. But Karma, she just has problems. She just doesn't scale as well. She doesn't have hard CC. She just doesn't have a lot of synergy with the powerhouse runes, like Nimbus Cloak. Or just like a lot of the powerhouse items. I mean, I guess she can go Zeke's if she wants to. You do have a low cooldown ult, but she just doesn't fit with, like, what's going on. I think a lot of it is just the lack of crowd control. She just doesn't have it. And a lot of the top champions are just going to have more crowd control than she does. So she's okay. I mean, you can still win games with her, sure, but, you know, she's just got a really low percentage. It just feels bad. Like, when I'm in the laning phase, I've played her a few times on this patch. When I'm in the laning phase, it feels good. I'm like, yeah, this is great, you know. Doing a lot of harassment. I'm poking them out of lane. But then I just kind of hit that mid game, and I'm just like, man, I just feel like I can't do anything. Like, I can speed people up and, like, run around and, like, cast Qs on people, but at the end of the day, I'm not doing that much. Like, I'm not having the same kind of big impact that, like, Rakan has when he uses his ult, or that Janna has when she uses her ult, or that, like, Nami has with all of her utility and her different abilities. I just feel like Nami just blows her out of the water early game. She's so much stronger than Karma is, both one-on-one, like, head-to-head against each other, but then also in terms of, like, synergy with a lot of the popular champions right now. You know, Karma's really good in a push meta where you don't really want to fight early. You just want to push in the tower. So she's good when things like Caitlyn are really good, Sivir, stuff like that. I just feel like that's just not the meta that we're in right now. So you can play Karma. She can win. She's still tier 2, but it's tough. And then finally we have Thresh. Thresh is good if you one-trick him. Otherwise, it's kind of rough. He just doesn't have a lot of really good synergy with the itemization and runes, and he's just really skill shot dependent. And that's not good when you're going to be playing against Lucian and Ezreal, who are just going to dodge everything that you do. So he's okay. I just think he needs a little bit of structural help. Like, some of his abilities need some help. They need to, like, lower the delay on his hook, or you know, just something. Increase the hitbox. Just do something with him. Okay, and then finally we have Pyke. Since the video is so long anyway, it's 123 minutes, I'm just not going to spend a lot of time talking about Pyke. Just watch the video. I have a Pyke impressions video on the channel, you know, that I did probably about a week ago. The TLDR is that the items and runes are just absolutely atrocious for him. Like, he's going to have to run lethality. He's going to have to go, like, Ghostblade, Dustblade. And, yeah, even by, like, top pro players, he's only 40% win rate. And then the overall population, he's 39, you know, 40% win rate pretty much. So from, you know, lower elo players to higher elo players, he's just very, very weak. Just the items are awful. You know, because he pretty much he has to go Dustblade, and then after that you can go Ghostblade if you want to. I mean, even look at some of these wins. Like a lot of them, the stats are just bad. Like this one's good. You know, this guy's 7-0. Now was he playing him? He was playing in middle though. That's the place where I said I thought he was. Oh no, well. No, it was Lulu middle. Okay. I was thinking that he might get played middle more than support. But it looks like most people are trying to play him as support. It just feels really bad. You know? Like, when you have the enchanters building things like, you know, Ardent Sensor for 2,300 or Zeke's for like 2,250. And, you know, these are like very high impact, like, items that have really, really good stats, and they have a lot of synergy and really buff up your AD carries. And then you have something like Pyke, who has to get, you know, like a 2,900 gold item, Dustblade. It's almost 50% more gold, so you're going to be really far behind. And yet he requires a snowball to get ahead because he's an assassin. So how do you snowball when your items are so expensive relative to other supports who are most of the time going to be ahead of you just because their items are like 50% cheaper? You know, like there's just so many like conflicts, right? With him. And also, like, what are you going to get for your boots, right? You just basically have to get Braum. I guess you can get like mobility boots and try to roam around, but you don't get any damage off your boots. If you play something like Fiddlesticks or Zyra, then you get damage off your boots potentially if you want sorcerer boots. And then, you know, you can't get any tanky items, so you're very squishy, so you're very vulnerable to other assassins. And everybody's running AD. So, like I said earlier, you know, like the perfect solo queue right now, a lot of times you're going to have something like an Irelia top lane and a Zen jungle. And if you want to run an AD support, they're going to have a ton of armor already. So you're not going to do any damage. So not only can you not get items, but when you actually get those items, when you get this Dustblade at like, you know, 20 minutes into the game or 25 minutes into the game, they're already going to be weak. And items like Dustblade and Ghostblade are designed to be bought early on in the game before people buy armor items, so you can really take advantage of that lethality. So when you're getting an item that's supposed to be rushed by like a mid lane assassin, like super late in the game, it's just not going to be very effective, especially when everybody's already buying a lot of armor, right, Rory? It's just not going to be that effective. So, you know, they might figure him out over the next couple of patches. I think he's going to be really hard to fix, but right now he's going to be tough. And in addition, oh no, Rory. Oh no. In addition, he's pretty hard to play correctly because he just came out. He's complicated, and a lot of people don't know how to play him. So, what is it, Rory? Are you mad? Oh no, honey, she's mad. She smells kind of stinky.
Yeah, she is.
Are you stinky, Rory? Oh, I set her down and she just stood right up. She's not happy about it, though. Is that right, Rory? 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 Anyways, so yeah. Pyke's not good right now. I wouldn't recommend him. He's fun. You can try him out, but if you're seriously trying to climb, I would stay away from him for a little bit, at least, until he gets some buffs. So, just watch my Pyke video. If you want to know all about Pyke, a lot of people watched it. A lot of people liked it. So just watch that, and I'll break it all down, and I'll talk about what needs to happen for him to become a lot more viable. So, anyways, that's going to be it for this video. I don't want it to be too much longer. But I did, because the meta shifted so much, I did want to spend a lot of time explaining some of these picks and why they're moving up. So a lot of stuff, you know, stayed relatively similar, but, you know, Rakan gained a lot, Nami moved up a little bit, and then Braum and Leona are probably the most conspicuous rising stars on this patch. So I think they'll be pretty interesting. And then Fiddlesticks, of course, jumped up a little bit as well. But yeah, that's good. Oh, Talia support, I don't know. I'll have to try it. Some people were talking about Talia. I'm not a believer. I don't think it's going to be that great. It's like, yeah, you do have cheap harass. It's like 1 mana to throw 1 single rock at somebody. You could say the same thing about Kennen support, right? Like, he's free. He doesn't cost any mana, and you can just throw shurikens all day in lane if you want at him. It just doesn't fix a lot of the other holes in her kit and in Kennen's kit. But anyways, okay, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe. It helps other people find the channel. It lets you know whenever I release new videos. If you want to support the channel, you can look in the description. Become a channel member via PayPal if you'd like. You'd get a 5%, or not a 5%, but a $5 discount on coaching sessions.
Twitter, Facebook.
$5 discount on guides if you want to commission those. My wife just reminded me. Check me out on Twitter as well, the Strat Prof. I'm starting to become a lot more active on there. My wife is helping me keep up with some of the posts. And then we're also on Facebook as well. I think I'm called like Harry Beardsley or something. If you look up the Strategy Professor on Facebook, you should be able to find it. But yeah, if you want to support the channel, we have that option with the PayPal, just $5. You get those discounts. You can also join us for a members night. Hey, thank you very much, Lil K. You could join us for members night every Tuesday. It's a lot of fun. We play with other members. You can join us on the awesome Discord. It's a lot of fun. We keep all the trolls out of there, all the trolls, the racists, the haters, all that stuff. It's just good, clean fun. On the Discord. Or I just also enabled a new way to support the channel called the YouTube sponsorship that they just rolled out a couple of months ago. That's basically just like a Twitch sponsorship where it's just $5 a month. You sign up via YouTube. We've got some chat emojis. I'm going to be adding some more into that. You get a special chat badge if you come out on the live stream. If you leave comments on videos, I will highly prioritize to answer them. I try to answer all the comments anyways, but your chat will stand out. You'll have a green chat when you leave comments, like green text, and I know that you're, a sponsor of the channel, and I'll 100% make sure I give you a really good, thorough answer to everything. And then you also get the Discord, and you also get to come out on Tuesdays if you're a channel sponsor as well. The only difference is if you're a channel sponsor, then I don't give the discount for coaching and the discount for guides, just so the PayPal is something that's a little bit different, right, for the people who have been longtime PayPal members. But anyways, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel. I'll see you next time.